Welcome back. Now, in recent years, various opinion pieces and debates have taken place around South Africa around one question. Are we still passing our mother tongue languages on to the next generation? Yesterday marked International Mother Language Day, and here at home, the question still rages on. Now, to help us dive into this complicated debate, I'm joined now by UKZN anthropologist, Dr. Balungile Zondi. Dr. Zondi, thank you so much and a very good evening to you. Thanks for joining us. Yes, a complicated conversation to have, sometimes quite sensitive, but very important. I guess we should start with, how did we get to a point where African children born of African parents on the African continent battle to speak their mother tongue?
Thank you so much, Masa, for having me here, and greetings to the viewers at home. One will just have to reflect back, and I think linguistic anthropologists and many other language specialists and practitioners would understand that the fragmentation that we are currently talking about, or the extinction that we are discussing now, should have been given significance even when in the inception of democracy, where equality and equity was a rule of thumb. The reason why our African languages sort of got dismembered, it is because of the political history or the economic history that Africa as a continent has endured. That is why we find ourselves facing extinction of our African languages. And there is evidence that isiZulu is one of those languages that are even, at a risk of vanishing in the future, meaning that they stand a chance of not being inherited by our future generations. And I was even laughing to myself when I received this call to say, I wonder how would you feel if we are to engage in this topic in isiZulu? And then I asked myself that now that I will be discussing this topic or conversing with you, who are we then sharing this information with? Who is our target audience?
Do you also think, of course, one of the beauties of being on the African continent and also being here in South Africa is our diversity as well. 11 official languages and more. Of course, we can switch it up a little bit here and there. But the main thing here is that when children then go to school, for instance, if we take a look at what's going on currently, English is the medium of instruction at schools that they attend. So how do parents ensure that when that child gets home, that they still speak isiZulu or Sepedi, Setswana, or whatever language it may be?
You know what? For me, when I even have a similar discussion with my colleagues, we always say that we grew up in a situation or in a country or in villages and societies where English is not only considered as a language of a medium of communication at a global level. However, it has been contextualized as a lens of superiority, as a lens of smartness, as a lens of elitism, as a lens of a variable of affluence. And when you are then seen, keeping and preserving your isiZulu, you are now categorized as still being a backward person, and even poor for that matter. So your identity really does not matter if you appear as a Zulu, indigenous speaker. So for your presence to be recognized and for your voice to be heard, people have got to think that you must convert yourself and your thinking and think like the others. And in this case, the majority of Africans, as well as AmaZulu, would find it comfort that I am comfortable in expressing myself in isiZulu, forgetting that that is where the extension of our language, because we then do not take our kids to these multiracial schools just to enhance social cohesion, but we feel that it is high time that we introduce them to the world of brilliant people. And there is evidence that if you are fluent in English, it does not mean that you are smarter than the other. It's just that you are privileged, that you are now part of a group that is multilingual or multilinguistic.
Now, as we mentioned, there's a responsibility, of course, incumbent on the parents to teach their children the language as well, to ensure that it's preserved. But also in a society, when you're speaking about the lens of superiority and the lens of smartness that is seen when you're speaking English in an eloquent manner as opposed to your own language, the shift that's supposed to happen socially, but also in the education system, is enough being done to preserve African languages? I've seen in some former Model C schools now, there are options more now than when I was certainly in school to take an African language as your second language as opposed to having English and Afrikaans. Is that kind of moving the needle a little bit, or you're not seeing enough of that, Dr. Zondi?
I think we really need to clap to our GNU if the discussion has been within the context that we currently part of in South Africa, because we do now have the Bela Bela Act. The Bela Bela Act then recognizes that there is the use of your isiZulu in the learning process in the education sector or system actually contributes to the cognitive learning outcome, which is then promotes equality, because when a learner or if a learner is taught in the language that she best understands, there is the chances are that even the outcome of her academic or his academic performance are likely to improve, because she is able to assimilate and then be able to critically engage with the subjects, because she is able or he is able to express himself in the language that he best understands. Then that on its own then goes back to the family to say, it is the responsibility of parents to make sure that they support our learners and children in making sure that they better understand the content of the subjects that they are being taught at school in isiZulu, so that they may then better understand them in English. But the first level of understanding should be in the language that is indigenously yours.
You know, just before I let you go as well, and sometimes what may appear as a comical kind of way, particularly on social media, you'll see posts of parents who will show that their children are struggling with homework in their indigenous language, with whatever, isiZulu or Sesotho. And sometimes there's almost kind of like a pride to say, oh, they don't know how to speak isiZulu, they don't know how to speak isiSotho, they only know English. But the tone in that, I want us to just talk about it as well, because earlier on you mentioned, you know, the history of this as well, the colonial history, oppressive history, which is of course designed to strip the African identity as well. But are we seeing consequences of that even in parents who aren't doing enough to try and enforce it in their children? And how do you enforce it in a 3-year-old, for instance, or a 4-year-old, a toddler?
You know what, one needs to accept that we find ourselves in this situation because it is because of privileges that our parents felt that because they were deprived, we should then be part of. And that's where it all started, because you find that it is that parents are being honest, because even themselves, they cannot conversate in their indigenous language because they were made to be part of a multilingual schools. And even when they got home, they were then channeled or made to express themselves in isiZulu or isiSotho. So now there is a new generation, and it is also tapping in the very same space where English is the only mode of communication. So I always then say, it's a pity because majority of us, because of labor migration, we no longer have umsam kagogo emakhaya, where you then try to balance things. During school days, you make sure that a learner or your child is now, communicating in English. But to come holidays, public holidays, they go back to ugogo nomkhulu. Ugogo nomkhulu akasazi isilungu. Ugogo will take the responsibility because they remain our repository of indigenous knowledge. Their role in our societies or in our villages is to make sure that they aid that which is about to extinct, and they promote, they ensure that there is preservation of the language. I am also raising twin boys. The other one loves isiZulu, the other one is fluent in English. But my responsibility is that now and again they must visit ekhaya, so that, because ekhaya umawam, not that she is not educated, but umawam finds comfort in expressing herself or even giving directions in isiZulu. Now they are now taking interest in even reading novels in isiZulu and even writing letters to me in isiZulu. Sometimes I laugh because there's distortion in the narrative that they're putting across, but at least there's an attempt. So I believe that the preservation should be then in this context to say, we needed to revive, those rural village connections so that they would eventually, benefit the preservation of languages that are running a risk of extinction.
And quickly, before I let you go, Dr. Zondi, just on that tip that is practical that parents can use as well, with the migration patterns that we're seeing as well, more people moving from the rural areas to urban areas as well, what will the African continent look like? What will South Africa look like if we continue on this trajectory and there are more children who are losing the ability to speak their mother tongue?
One really needed to be very sad if we really do not do something, to restore the little that we have, because one needs to emphasize that there is little that needs to be restored. However, our minds as adults, we should understand that it's okay to be Umzulu and sound like Umzulu, even if you locate yourself in Italy, because that is how one, I think, will be able to create a space of multilingualism growth, so that we'd also allow other cultures to learn from ours. I think we have deprived the other ethnic groups and cultures from learning, a wealth of knowledge, which I think they can even relate with, just because we are so confined in taking English as the only means of communication. So I think it's time that we try better and do things better, take pride in our African languages. And I think one would then have to agree that Amakosa, the Sutus, the Petis are most likely to, they love their languages, even if they find themselves having to express themselves in isiZulu or in English, sorry for that. But their tone does not really change. You can simply tell that, this one is Xhosa. But for us, AmaZulu, you try to impress.
Well, Dr. Zondi,
to sound like a white person, it's not a problem. However, you are selling a beautiful language that really needs to be restored and preserved.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. Dr. Zondi, ngiyabonga kakhulu for your time this evening. Have a good evening. Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Zondi. I really appreciate it. That's anthropologist from the University of KwaZulu-Natal, Dr. Zondi, just talking to us about the importance of preserving our mother tongue languages.